call to change out here. Dang, I'm late for Mom's rally.
The subject of legal action against Sony in recent days, many users have reported that a lack of preciseness in regards to the analog sticks on the PS5 Dualsense controller, and now it looks like we know why. PS5 Dualsense controller stick drift issues have been investigated in a brand new teardown video from tech website iFixit, and spotted by VGC, revealing that Sony's PS5 Dualsense controller will only have a functional life of 417 hours, and that figure is expected to deteriorate over time. So before jumping into the discussion, if you are new, subscribe to the channel and click the notification icon for knowing instant updates, interesting and informative topics in the daily gaming world. Now let's jump in.
Go, go, go! Stop!
Whoa! Let's not shoot each other, alright?
Sony's latest and greatest in console gaming, the PlayStation 5, came swinging out of the gates last year. The Japanese giant has experienced the most successful PlayStation launch in its history, which even aside from the data seems obvious given the sheer popularity. With the launch of PlayStation 5, everyone wants to know what games they could enjoy with the new, addicting DualSense controller. First, a few words about some of the best features of the DualSense controller. Everyone remembers PS4's DualShock controller. Arguably the PS5 used its design and took it to a whole new level. They also made the haptic feedback far more sensitive, creating a much better experience for players, and the innovative adaptive triggers that brought console gaming to a whole new level. The best feature PS has addressed is the battery life. While the DualShock 4 lasts about 8 hours, the DualSense controller lasts up to 12. And the most exciting part is the new built-in microphone that sweeps any veteran gamer off their feet. PS5 has truly gone above and beyond, introducing these new features in sound, graphics, and especially the new DualSense controller. Leveraging the same off-the-shelf bill of materials that was previously seen in the analog sticks featured in previously released controllers such as Sony's own DualShock 4 pad, it's fair to say that the DualSense controller is essentially using older components and parts that don't quite align with Sony's vision of cutting-edge technology that the rest of the PlayStation 5's design would seem to reflect. ALPS, the company which manufactures these components, issued a technical sheet which outlined the operational stresses and parameters that its analog sticks could withstand. In that sheet, the expected operative life for the PS5 DualSense analog stick's potentiometers, the rotating part of the stick, is 2 million cycles. Meanwhile, the center push operation, when you click the stick in or engage with the R3L3 control functions, is pegged at 50,000 cycles. Testing this in a real-world scenario, iFixit used Call of Duty, Warzone, a game with a high degree of constant stick stress, to contend that this would result in just 417 hours of gameplay before ALPS' own expected stress thresholds have been exceeded for the analog sticks found in the PS5 DualSense controller. Naturally, this will vary depending on the sort of games that are played, with less stressful titles such as strategy games, visual novels, and so on, all inflicting a far lesser burden on the sticks. On average, iFixit believes that using the PS5 DualSense controller for 2 hours a day will see the analog stick component parts exceed their expected life in just 7 months. For reference, the PlayStation 5 console released back in November 2020, and at the time of writing, this means that we should probably expect to see increasing volumes of the user base start reporting the DualSense drift issue as we head towards the 7-point point in May 2021. Ultimately, iFixit discloses that the cause of the PS5 DualSense controller drift is primarily the result of wear and tear to the potentiometer. It's also worth noting that this conclusion is also shared by those who have filed lawsuits against Sony too. The wear and tear to the PS5 DualSense potentiometer is the key cause for the drifting issues that players are seeing. The site also notes that dust and other invasive materials can also contribute to the drift problem as well. When it comes to sorting the problem out, iFixit says there are 3 things you can do. First, attempt to fix the controller yourself or via an experienced tech. Second, send the controller back to Sony under its manufacturer's warranty, which should see you covered for up to 12 months. Or third, buy a new DualSense controller. Given these sorts of remedial actions, iFixit posits that it's strange that console manufacturers don't focus more on empowering consumers to more easily replace such components, stating, "After this research, it's bizarre to us that console makers don't consider joysticks to be consumable parts and design them to be easily replaced. No device rated for a finite number of actions, especially one that lives next to so much contamination and takes so much abuse, can maintain perfect performance forever." So if you have a DualSense controller, and have you noticed any drifting issues? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
Are you gonna do it?
Moving forward, we have the console shortage situation, as ID Software co-founder John Carmack thinks the best way to fight scalpers is for companies to auction products directly to consumers. Anyone who has managed to snag a PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X should count themselves lucky. Demand for next-gen consoles drastically outpaced supply, allowing scalpers to exploit and exacerbate the problem. It has reached the point where some sources estimate that up to 15% of PS5s may have gone to scalpers. But ID Software co-founder John Carmack thinks he has a solution. He believes that the most effective way to combat scalping is for Sony and Microsoft to cut out the middleman and auction their PlayStation and Xbox consoles directly to the public. The co-creator of Doom and Quake explained his position in a series of tweets on Thursday. He criticized the retail model used for selling consoles and most other hardware. He specifically called out the shortages of Nvidia's new GeForce 3090 graphics cards, in addition to the highly publicized scalping of PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X consoles. Carmack believes that auctioning consoles directly to consumers would create a much more effective and transparent system. He acknowledges that auctioning, rather than setting a fixed retail price, would result in a more expensive product out of the gate. However, Carmack believes that would only be a temporary issue. He argues that allowing people to decide what a product is worth to them would naturally lead to lower prices for most customers. He also argues that the only thing preventing such a system is the industry's dedication to more conventional sales channels such as retail, wholesale, and so on. Carmack notes that many products are already beginning to move past these models of distribution. He does not name any specific examples, however. Canadian programmer Daryl Johnson offered a counterargument to Carmack's suggestion. He argues that scarcity makes a product more desirable, while a high price makes it less so. Johnson asserts that consumers are willing to wait for an out-of-stock product. On the other hand, they are more likely to choose the less expensive option regardless of availability. John Carmack acknowledges that Johnson's statement is in line with the prevailing wisdom. However, he remains unconvinced, believing that mindset is out of date. Says Carmack, that is probably the current reasoning, with decades of evidence to back it up, but it is at least conceivable that things actually are a bit different now than when a lot of the marketing lore was laid down. It's difficult to say how practical Carmack's proposal would be if rolled out on a large scale. Many hardware and software manufacturers already sell products directly to customers. However, Carmack suggests a much more radical change to how companies and consumers interact. And even if this system benefits the consumer, it's not clear what incentive corporations like Sony and Microsoft would have to take part. It is also unclear if it would prevent the loopholes scalpers use to get in ahead of everyone else. Still, no one can deny scalping is a significant problem. As is mentioned above, data engineer Michael Driscoll estimates that scalpers resold 10 to 15% of all PS5s. Many of these resellers charge up to twice the item's retail value. Despite the defenses offered by some scalpers, it is clear to many that something needs to change. Carmack, at least, has a suggestion. But my thoughts are on the knife's edge on this situation.
What is it saying?
He wants to help us!
And finally we have the Marvel's Avengers game. New as Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics have provided details on the Marvel's Avengers PS5 and Xbox Series X/S enhancements, and while there's a lot of performance advantages to be seen, it curiously omits the ray tracing support previously mentioned last year. Among the features include significantly faster load times, improved frame rate, high-resolution textures, contact-aware sharpening, high-resolution translucency, and spatial audio. A couple of these are also available when playing the PS4 version on PS5. Faster loading times, for example, but the native PS5 version is a different beast. Haptic feedback for the DualSense controller is also confirmed, joining the ever-growing list of PS5 games to take advantage of the new pad. As mentioned, despite ray tracing being mentioned last year by the studio for inclusion in the next-generation version of the game, it appears to have been given the boot. After months of waiting, the Clint Barton Hawkeye deep dive finally arrived earlier this week and offered Marvel's Avengers fans some more details about the game's second free add-on character. Fans have been eager for new content and reassurance that the game is moving in the right direction, so seeing a new character's gameplay in action was definitely a welcome sight. That said, despite confirmation that Hawkeye's toolkit looks like fun, and some awesome comics-accurate skins, the livestream still left some parts of the community feeling a little uneasy about the path forward for Marvel's Avengers and what hints were offered about the future of the game. Many of the complaints came from players who have already invested a serious number of hours in the game, and have maxed out the existing heroes. Understandably, that crowd is running out of activities to keep themselves busy, and the weekly rotation of priority missions and harm challenges may be starting to get more than a little stale. The first complaint is the release date March 18th. Some fans had the unrealistic expectation that the character would be available for play by the end of the week, while others seem to think any release by the end of February would have been acceptable. By the time the March 18th release date for Hawkeye rolls around, the game will have been out for roughly 6 months and released just 2 add-on characters. Although there was never an official roadmap, there seemed to be an expectation that the game would be received monthly updates to add new characters and villains frequently. At this pace, it feels like Black Panther and Spider-Man are still a long way off. The next one is, no teaser for future content. At the end of the Kate Bishop deep dive, players got a brief tease of the Clint content that would be following Kate's release and story. Not only did the tag at the end of the presentation feel very Marvel in theme, but it also helped reassure players that the game has a future. Some fans are feeling a bit worried after the Hawkeye deep dive lacked any sort of teaser for what comes after March 18th. It should be noted that these teasers can be a bit of a double-edged sword. They do help reassure fans that the game has a planned future, but they also raise even more questions about release dates, roadmaps, and schedules. It's quite possible, and likely, that the developers are already hard at work on whatever comes after Hawkeye's missions, but doesn't want to raise more roadmap questions by revealing too much at once. The final and the most important one is the lack of bosses and villains, and the villain reskin theories. First players had to revisit Taskmaster, and now there are theories that the main villain in the Clint content is just going to be a reskinned abomination fight. The game is definitely lacking a variety of bosses, and could use some more challengers to help keep endgame players busy as they grind for new better gear and resources. In addition to the bosses, there's also the issue of robot grunts that feel like more of the same. Since the earliest days of beta testing, players have been offering feedback that a lack of enemy variety is an issue in the game, but so far AIM bots seem to be the only grunts challenging the heroes. My suggestion would be introducing Atoma and the Army of Atlantis, Red Skull and Hydra, Dracula and vampires, and maybe Hyperion and more. When it comes to characters, Marvel has no scarcity, and I don't know why Square Enix is sticking to the same page. More details about the Hawkeye content should continue to arrive in the coming weeks as the March 18th release date approaches for his operation, and the new generation versions of the game. Until then, be sure to check back frequently for more Marvel's Avengers news guides and updates. And that's all for the video, guys. If you like the informative video, give it a like and share the video and comment your thoughts on DualSense drift issue, the auction situation, and the next-gen upgrade of Marvel's Avengers. And until then, from SMPV, it's goodbye.